Welcome to the Private Property Farming Podcast. My name is Mbali Nwoko, and thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday evening, right now at 8 o'clock. If you're catching us on our Facebook channels, thank you for subscribing and following us on all our platforms, social media channels rather, not Facebook. But thank you so much for following us on Facebook, Instagram, on Twitter, as well as LinkedIn, and also subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's always fantastic to see more and more subscribers, more and more people watching the Private Property Farming Podcast and all the other podcasts that we have right here under the Private Property family today, and which we'll be discussing about olive oils. We had this guest last week, but because of connection, we couldn't quite hear her well, and she's got so much information around olive oils, especially around agro-processing, that we felt it necessary to have her onto the show once again, solo, so that we could ask all the questions with regards to olive oil farming, olive oil agro-processing, and how she just got into the industry. It's such a niche crop to be farming olives. And so before we get into tonight's show, I just want to mention a very, very important announcement here, is that we actually have the Real Estate Industry Summit brought to you by Private Property in partnership with ABSA coming quite soon. So this is the Real Estate Industry Summit brought to you by Private Property in partnership with ABSA, which will be taking place on the 29th of October 2021. So this is a wonderful opportunity to expand your real estate knowledge, your expertise, and hear some of the most influential players in the property sector. So if you have a passion for real estate, I believe that the summit is for you. The summit will be taking place virtually, so be sure to tune in on Facebook on the 29th of October from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. South African time. The link of the event is in the comment section, and further details will also be available in the show description, or you could visit www.realestateindustrysummit.co.za. Once again, www.realestateindustrysummit.co.za. So be sure to tune in on the 29th of October, 9 to 1, and all the details will be on that website. And so, this one is for you, all industry or real estate lovers out there. Please continue to support the Private Property channel as well. And another announcement is that we do have a competition running called Know Your Crop. This is under the Farming Podcast, and it's all about telling us about what crop you're growing, and let us know one thing or two about your crop that could obviously fascinate us as the audience, or just enlighten us in terms of why you decided to farm or plant or grow that crop. And we have two competition winners today. I just want to quickly announce the name because it's very imperative that you comment on tonight's live for you to claim your prize. And of course, the prize is a 500 Rand cash voucher that you will be walking away with should you be selected as the winner for the Know Your Crop campaign. So today's winners is Uzama Mtetwa from Facebook, and we also have Sis_Zwane from Twitter. So that is Zama Mtetwa from Facebook, and at Sis_Zwane from Twitter. So for Zama as well as Sis, please comment directly onto tonight's show and tell us something fascinating. You could just say, great show. You could share this. And also maybe ask our guest a question. We love engagement onto the show. So maybe ask our guest a question about her business and what she does and what she grows, and listen attentively to her business as well. So I think we have pretty much got the formalities out the way. I'm quite excited to bring Bianka Boezaart onto the show. Let us welcome her. She is a director of Kleinbergskloof, olive agro-processing, and her farm is based, I think, in the Northern Cape, if I stand to be corrected, but she will let us know quite shortly. And she's here to tell us about olive oil agro-processing and her role within a company. Bianka, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Hi, Bali. Thanks so much for having me back, specifically after all of those horrible connection issues that I had last week.
No, it's understandable. These things happen. Were you based in the Northern Cape? Was it not?
No, we're in the Western Cape. We're in a
Western
small
Cape.
coastal town. Yeah,
Small
Western Cape.
coastal town. Yeah, I think it was that whole small town notion that I thought maybe it's Northern Cape. And I'm just thinking olive oils might need some dry area or not. But yeah, in the Western Cape. So thank you once again for coming onto the show. Just to get straight into it as well, maybe for those who missed the first segment where we had your father onto the show as well as yourself, maybe just explain to us what Kleinbergskloof does and what is your role within the company?
Okay, so we are an olive and wedding estate. So based in Stilbaai in the Western Cape, and our primary focus is olive and olive production. So we've got our olive orchards on the farm where we farm olives, harvest, press, or actually extract olive oil ourselves, and then also process other olives for use in other olive products. We have diversified into other areas of business as well. The farm, we benefit from a magnificent view of the Goukou River in Stilbaai, and we decided that we needed to, capitalize on that in a way. So we also ventured into accommodation on the farm as well as weddings and events. So we've got a wedding venue there where we host as well, but the primary focus is olive.
Yeah, I love this. Oh, sorry. I was before you get into your role. I love this whole value add that farmers are doing on their farms. Because farms are such beautiful places to be in, very peaceful, beautiful scenery. And I've seen some farms in the Western Cape. Gorgeous. And I like the fact that you've added this wedding venue into the mix. But, without diverting, maybe just tell us, like you were saying, your role within Kleinbergskloof.
Sure. So we like to describe ourselves as a boutique estate still, simply for the fact that we are not one of the bigger producers in the field. However, we like the feeling that boutique gives to the product that we produce, because we focus on on quite a esteemed product. Yeah. So the business is family owned and family run. As I mentioned last time, it's myself, my father, and as well as my mother who's involved in the business. And we've each got our own separate areas that we focus on. My father is the farmer, and he makes sure, and he's also the olive oil maker. And then we've got my mother, who's like the product developer and also quality control from every product perspective. And then it's myself, basically doing everything else, from sales to marketing to the branding journey to developing new markets or creating demand, focusing on everything else really around building a business.
Right. But before you joined Kleinbergskloof, Bianka, what were you doing before that? Because I remember asking or saying to your father in the previous podcast, how did he manage to twist your arm and get you into the farm? And you actually interjected by saying, oh, no, I'm the one that said I want to be part of the farm. So what were you doing before, and what made you decide to join your family business?
So my background is actually completely different. I came from the last place that I worked was one of the biggest e-commerce companies in South Africa, and I was actually focusing on commercial effectiveness within that space.
Okay.
So a lot of it was focused on like commodity economics, understanding what our different revenue streams are, what our cost streams are, and how we can make our cost streams more efficient, as well as improve more on our revenue streams. So focusing mostly on retail, specifically and fashion. But from there, the type of skill that I was very grateful, actually, because the type of skills and the exposure that I got was very business focused and very commercial focused. And I feel that that's something that you can take into in the industry. So it was a personal choice for me to move out of that space and move into farming, into the family business. And there's a few reasons for that. So from a personal perspective, it's one, I'm very grateful and humbled to be able to say this, it's my passion. Not just the farming side, and like obviously I love olive oil and I love what you can do with it and just the opportunities that it offers. But I also love being part of the family business. And building on something that was started by my folks, really, and then seeing how far we can take that. But then also for the lifestyle, I decided that I want to be able to have the flexibility in what I do and when I do it. The strange thing is that now I work harder than ever, but it doesn't necessarily feel like work, because it's for our own business and it's for our own purpose, which makes it so much better. And then also just, and I said this last time, I feel very lucky that it can be, but I see a lot of opportunities from a business perspective in this space. And I can zone in on that a little bit, but I actually made, so there's a governing body in olive oil called SA Olive. And the chair of SA Olive is Mr. Dick Wilkinson. And I attended a ceremony last week where he actually gave one of the speeches, and he gave a whole bunch of stats around the olive oil industry in South Africa, and just a bunch of drivers that he gave forward as reasons for us to motivate us to, like, there were a bunch of different growers there to say, you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing. So I don't have the stats with me. I won't be able to give you all the exact numbers, but basically what it comes down to is, in the last 20 years, olive oil consumption, specifically extra virgin olive oil consumption in the world, has doubled. The expectation is that in the next 20 years, it is once again going to be doubled. There's something like 5 or 7 trees being planted every hour across the world. People are moving into olive industry. And what that means is, so just quickly going on a side note, another big thing that's happening, 2 of the big producers in the world, like the traditionally big producers, Italy and Greece, or Italy and Spain, apologies, they are moving towards stricter regulation when it comes to extra virgin olive oil. So essentially, they won't be able to sell anything with a wording of extra virgin or virgin on anything other than olive oil. So what we've traditionally seen in, like, South African market is we would import what we think is Spanish or Italian olive oil, but it usually blends. It's got some form of other oil in it, so it's a cheaper thing for them to export. But we are unknowing consumers, so we think that we're getting a premium product. It's exported, it comes from Spain or it comes from Italy, so we buy it. And it also made it very difficult for local producers to be able to compete with those products, because our costs are so high, and we do pure extra virgin olive oil. So how do you compete to those type of producers? But now what's happening is they're moving towards stricter regulation, and they won't be able to do that, which is a huge bonus for, specifically if you think of South African olive oil. And then the just going back to the fact that the demand is growing so much, and that the expectation is that the demand is going to keep growing over the next 20 years, is when it comes to olive oil production, when you produce it en masse, when you do bulk olive oil production, it becomes very difficult to do complex styles olive oils. So getting a little bit technical here, but basically what you'll then do is you'll produce a single variety oil. So you'll have your varieties like your Mission or your Frontoio, or you don't really use Kalamata, I'm just thinking out loud now, but you'll have a single variety olive oil that you put that one varietal through your press, and that's the oil that you're going to sell, because you need to be able, the market will, or the industry will want to keep up with the market. But the type of oils that South African producers make are complex, premium style blended oils. So we use old school techniques to make a really high quality, well balanced, delicious, like amazing olive oil product, but it takes time and it takes a lot of resource. You don't get as much out of it from a profit perspective as you do with just doing a single variety. But what that means is that the world, there's going to be a shortage in supply of this type of quality olive oil. So if you focus, I mean, you can go either way. It depends on the business model that you adapt. But either way, the story is good. The demand is going to be there. What we want to know is, will we be able to keep up with the demand from a local perspective? And basically just like hearing those type of stats and having that type of conversations again just confirmed for me again the decision I made recently, is that there's potential and there's something to focus on. So sorry, I went all the way around now to give you just the bigger picture, but now you understand it's a market with a whole lot of potential, and it's something that I think if there is anyone in South Africa looking to enter a new market from an agri side, I shouldn't be telling competitors to join, but it's a good place to be.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for those stats in the background around olive oil, because it's such a niche crop. You don't get to meet an olive farmer every day, and so it's quite great that you put it into perspective where we stand from a global aspect in terms of olive oil. Going back to Kleinbergskloof and your role within the organization, right? You mentioned that processing, specifically the Kleinbergskloof brand, it is a premium brand. It requires a lot of resources and a lot of time. Maybe how long does it take, from the growing side? So from primary production going to post, let's say that processing element, how long does it take to get a premium olive oil brand bottled from post-harvest to pack house? Because you mentioned it's premium. It needs a decent amount of resources to make it premium and to taste good and to meet the standards. So how long does that processing a value add take to make sure that at the end of the day you have a product that still meets good quality standards, export ready, or locally can be supplied locally and still meet consumer standards as well?
So just going back to the very beginning, my father focused on this more last week when we were with you as well. Basically, if you plant an olive tree, you've got 4 or 5 years for what you can call like a half harvest. The tree will start bearing fruit, but it takes something like 7 to almost 8 years for it to have a full harvest where you get full yield from your tree. So that's your setup time initially to get to that point. But you can start harvesting around about 5 years.
Okay.
Then what you do is you run on a yearly cycle. So your trees will bear fruit once a year. You'll see typically starts very standard to any edible plants or trees that we know. So in September, you'll start with the little flowers on the trees, which will then eventually blossom and grow into fruit, which we then harvest around autumn next year. So we harvested our olives between March and May this year. And we're now starting to see our 2022 harvest already starting to grow on the trees. Okay. Now, once you go from harvest, so it depends on the type of oil that you want to make. Because we make quite a premium extra virgin olive oil, we prefer to harvest our olives more on the green side, rather than, so you get green and purple olives. All purple olives were green, and all green olives will become purple. So we don't harvest our olives when it's ripe. Basically, when it's purple, we harvest more on the green side, and that gives you a stronger, more grassy flavor olive oil, where if you taste it, you can feel it in the back of your throat, that olive oil. But what that does mean is that you get less out of the fruit because it's green, so you get less oil out of the fruit. So it's a balance that you have to decide on. So we would typically harvest from, as I said, from March to May, and what drives that is the different varieties that we have. So we have Mission, Frantoio, Lacino, and Coratina. The last 3 of them are Italian varieties, and the first one is US variety. And they ripen at different stages throughout the autumn months. So we would wait until the specific cultivar varietal is at exactly the right ripeness for us to pick it. Then what's important is that you pick those olives within a 2-week space, because you don't want them to get too ripe and you want them to be very similar. The other thing that's important is, and this is something that I started to touch on last time before I got cut off, but if you pick a fruit today, you have 24 hours to get that fruit cleaned through the press and into a storage location, a cold storage location. Because the moment you pick that fruit from the tree, it starts oxidizing because it comes into contact with oxygen. So, and that reduces the quality of the oil immediately. So you want to get it into that cold, cool, dark stainless steel container as quickly as possible. So we give ourselves 24 hours to do that. So you don't have a lot of time. You can't pick now and then maybe extract the oil 2 weeks down the line. You do that right now. But that happens throughout 3 months. Then typically we will leave the oil in the stainless steel containers for in a period ranging between 2 to 3 months, where my father goes into the blending process.
Okay.
Now, contrary to wine, olive oil doesn't get better with age. You actually want an olive oil as fresh as possible. If you're a consumer buying olive oil, look on every bottle. There has to be a harvest date and a bottling date, the bottom of it, as well as a batch number. Look for those batch numbers and make sure that you buy a fresh olive oil. And when I say fresh, I mean nothing less than or older than a year. Technically, if olive oil is stored correctly, regulations or the regulatory authorities or bodies say that you have 24 months in which to consume. So if someone is selling an oil older than 12 months, it's not that they're breaking any laws or giving you a bad quality oil. It's just not the best quality oil that you can get. Anyway, so in those 3 months, my dad would go and he would work on his blends. So you then go and say, okay, I've got this much front oil, this much Lucino. You would taste what it tastes like, because every year you get a slightly different flavor harmony out of each of them. And he wants to blend them to make sure that he gets the exact right flavor and the estate blend that he wants to sell. So he'll take his time to taste the olive oil, work on his blend. And during that time, you also send your oils off for testing. There's a lab based in Joburg or Pretoria where they make sure that the oxidation levels in the oil is right. They'll look for, what's it called? The hair dye that you use for to bleach your hair. Oh, man, it's on the bottle. I've got the bottle here with me. Oh, I can't remember. Oh,
okay.
So they basically make sure that the quality of the oil is within regulation of selling an extra virgin olive oil, and that there's no toxins or anything bad in the oil. Once you get those lab results back.
Yeah, what I want
peroxide. That's the word.
Pardon? Just repeat that.
Peroxide.
Peroxide
in olive oil, but it has to be under a certain level. Sorry,
So what I want to find out is that basically you've mentioned the different varieties and the importance of processing the olive oil within, minutes after harvesting it, right? And you mentioned your technique around harvesting the green as opposed to the purple, once it's ripe. Once you've harvested the green and you're putting it into the processing facility, are there any other things that you're adding within that processing element to maybe make the olive oil maybe taste sweeter? I wouldn't know. Or especially even flavors. Does it come in different flavors? So what else do you add within that processing value chain until the actual olive oil is now bottled and ready to be sold?
It's a very good question. And the answer is absolutely nothing.
Wow.
That's the whole thing about olive oil. It is 100% pure olive oil. And that's what the difference between extra virgin, and the just standard olive oil. So extra virgin olive oil means that the olives were put through the press only once. So that's that initial olive oil that you get from the fruit. You get a little bit from the pip, but it's the best quality oil that you can get from an olive. If you buy virgin olive oil, that then means that the mush that you get on the other side after you've extracted the first round of olive oil gets put through the press again, and then you extract more. But that's got a lower quality and it's got a higher tannin level, which is not necessarily always that nice to taste. But you get more oil, so you get a bigger yield. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the type of product that you want to sell in the end. And then if you want, you can put it through again, but then you're not even close to any form of virginity for the oil. So what you see then as olive oils sold as the flavored olive oil, so the chili oil or the lemon and oregano oil or something like that, that would typically be the oil that gets extracted on the second or third time of putting this fruit through the press. And then they add, I don't think it's flavored, and I'm saying they because it's not something that we do, but you would then add your flavoring. So you'd have in your stainless steel container, you could add the chilies in to start infusing the oil and create the chili flavored olive oil. So I would be quite surprised if someone actually made an extra virgin flavored olive oil, just because of the high cost involved in firstly creating an extra virgin olive oil and the quality of the product that you're working with. I can't imagine of seeing flavored olive oil, but you don't really see that. So the big thing is, and that's very important, and that's why olive oil is vegan friendly. It's got all of these benefits because it's so natural and it doesn't have anything added to it. The one thing that can affect it is obviously your farming techniques. If you use pesticides or any growth hormones or something like that, that would be in the fruit, which would then get extracted into the oil. But that is something that that's tested for in the quality controls before you're allowed to sell the oil. It's tested for the level of those toxins necessarily in the oil, and it's very low. Like you struggle to pass with any form of like really hardcore pesticide or stuff on your
And tell me, Bianca, within Kleinbergskloof, is there a specific percentage of olives that go for processing, and a specific percentage maybe that goes to selling directly to your customers just as olives, or are you completely a processing olive oil farm?
No, we do both. Okay. So for us, we actually work with some of the other farms in our area as well, because when we sell whole olive product or any olive product other than like a edible olive product other than olive oil, we like to use the mission varietal, which is a really big, like it's got a lot of meat. It's a really beautiful big olive essentially. So it's really nice to have in brine or to pickle because it holds its shape quite well. It doesn't go soggy. It's nice to look at. It's a nice olive. And we don't grow on the estate actually as much of the missions as what our demand is at the moment. So big part of what my dad's job is to build relationship with some of the other olive farmers and to make sure that he gets the pick of his crop for the quality that he wants to sell under the Kleinbergskloof label. So our olive oil we produce on the farm, but some of the olives that we sell, we actually buy in for processing for those products. And that's also, it's definitely something that could be considered if you're going into an olive oil business. Because we are a smaller farm, it's more expensive for us to grow olives.
Okay.
And you don't have the bulk where you start getting efficiencies of scale and having as much olives. So we make sure that we produce a world-class extra virgin olive oil. And we make sure that we produce world-class olive products.
Yeah.
But for that, we make sure that we've got a supply chain that supports that type of demand that we've built up under the brand.
Okay, got it. In the agri industry, there's almost so much pressure for farmers to start processing or adding some sort of value add to their primary crop, to just get additional revenue streams, maybe to reduce waste on their farms, and also just add another product, that has a longer shelf life. So within your farm as well, have you found that there's greater chances maybe for profitability in agro processing or processing the olives, or is the balance pretty much the same whether you're selling the olives raw or processed?
So that becomes a numbers game essentially, as efficiencies of scale you can get. And it depends on which business model you want to follow. So we do small batch premium quality olive oil. We with that kept in mind, that defines the customer that we work with, it defines the stockists that we work with, it defines the packaging that we have on the product, it defines the way we communicate. Where you've got your big growers who go into the quantity game, and then you start, once you've got those high levels of productions, you can start looking at stuff like doing a chili oil and a lemon oil, something, because you've got this extra product that you need to start utilizing. So I think there's there's arguments going both ways.
Yeah.
And if I look at what the trend in the industry is we have a lot of small, high quality producers, and then a handful of the bigger, they also do high quality products, but then you've got, I think there's about like 90% of the industry is almost controlled by 11 big growers or big producers who then go that game.
Yeah. Wow, Bianca, my last question for this evening is pretty much, what tips would you give to a person who wants to maybe go into the processing element of olive oil? I remember we had a young agripreneur a few episodes back who is also processing his own virgin extra olive oil. So, just for a farmer, maybe who's growing olive oils, even on a small scale, let's say about 5 hectares, 10 hectares or so, and maybe he's just thinking of other alternative ways of getting some additional income for their farm. Like, what are some maybe 2 tips, do's and don'ts each, 2 tips each, do's and don'ts that you would recommend to an olive farmer where agro-processing is concerned?
So one thing that immediately came to mind as a don't, and this is not necessarily on agro-processing, this is about your final product, is don't sell something for the sake of selling it, because it can be detrimental. And why I say that is, I'm going to give you a practical example, is we recently launched new packaging where we have a very specialized cap on the bottle, which is called a slow pourer, which is really nice because it gives you a lot of control when you're pouring your olive oil, instead of it just opening and this whole blob of oil falls in your plate. What that means, though, is that it's a non-refillable bottle. So once the bottle is empty, you will have to throw it away. And restaurants don't necessarily like spending money on that because it's more expensive for them to keep replenishing new bottles. So we considered at some point, shouldn't we be looking at a refillable cap? But then we realized the moment you go that route, yes, we'll get a few initial sales, we'll tap into some restaurants, we'll be able to make sales to them, get some exposure, but you have absolutely no control around what happens to that bottle or that oil after the initial product's been used. So that restaurant or that consumer can fill it up with whatever they want afterwards. They can buy a cheap olive oil somewhere else and fill it into your brand name, and the customers are going to consider, yes, it could be a new market opportunity or will create more demand for us, but because we want to market ourselves and position ourselves as a premium product, that means you have to control. So don't just think about because that's essentially what you're building. You want to build a brand that consumers recognize and consumers trust. And then just from making sure that you get the best quality sticks and everything that inevitably comes into the bucket of harvested olives. Not everyone needs to do that, and it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't have a bad impact, but it can affect the taste of it. So set yourself up for success essentially from the get-go is the big tip that I can give. And there's a few things from a technical perspective in that one. You asked for 2. I don't have another don't.
It's okay. I think some of your tips are quite critical. Rinsing, take out olive oil agro processing, which is her main function, over and above the marketing, the branding, and the sales with the Kleinbergskloof olive brand. So follow them on social media. I know that they're on Instagram, and maybe you could visit their website. I mean, they are 2-time award-winning SA Olive competition winners. So, they are selling a very premium brand, and they take very good pride and key processing of the olives. And it is a premium brand. If you missed tonight's episode, please catch it on our YouTube channel at Private Property under the Farming playlist. And if you have any specific technical questions around olive oil, or if you want to purchase Kleinbergskloof olive, please contact Bianca or Kleinbergskloof directly onto their platform. That's it for me this evening. I'm so sad that Zama and Sis_Zwane could not claim their prize. Unfortunately, it will go to the next round of winners. winners. Perhaps Thursday, maybe not, but constantly follow us on our social media platforms. That's where you'll see the campaign Know Your Crop running. Share a picture of a crop, let us know one thing or two about your crop, and you could stand a chance to win 500 Rand in cash prize. And don't forget our Real Estate Industry Summit on the 29th of October, which will be held virtually. Go to our website to see all the other information around that. And this is for all the industry or real estate lovers. This is where the summit will be held virtually, and you could get all the information around me tonight. Signing out, Mbali Nwoko, and I'll see you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Take care.